The secular humans community needs your voice, and I'm here to help you get ready to record. So one of the things I've discussed on my channel before is my chronic anxiety, the result of things which occurred in my childhood. Said ailments are perhaps the most debilitating element of my mental health, especially with the line of work I'm in with recording videos. At its peak, it's responsible for my erratic speech pattern, my omittance of entire words and sentences, and various other artifacts which, sadly, decrease the clarity of my work. But I'm not powerless, and neither are you. So today I'll be going over a few things that I've picked up during my time of being a YouTuber. Today we'll be covering 4 areas of warm-up and training: your lungs, your throat, your jaw, and your mind. Do note, I'm not a professional instructor. These are merely some things I find helpful which hopefully will offer you some sort of benefit in discovering your voice if you ever wanted to get out there and start a vlog or podcast. So let's start with what is perhaps the most important physical element in all of this: the lungs. Now, some people find breathing whilst projecting their voice in a presentation to be no problem, and that's great if that's you. But if you're like me and have chronic anxiety, sometimes you just can't seem to breathe properly. It actually got so bad at one point that I had to go to a doctor and receive a barrage of tests just to make sure there wasn't a physiological problem. So if you're having that problem, do not despair. You're not alone and you can still do this. Now the first trick I want you to learn is actually something I've heard in a lot of meditation exercises, and that's using your hands to assist your breathing. So I want you to take both of your hands and place one firmly on your chest and the other slightly less firmly on your stomach. Now I want you to try breathing in as much as you can, and here's the trick. As you're breathing in, I want you to try to push the hand on your stomach outward, whilst keeping the hand on your chest still. This is deep breathing. Very often we become used to shallow breathing, breathing in our upper chest, which is fine for a general conversation, but if you're projecting your voice, as many of us do when recording audio for a clear end result, you often find yourself out of breath very quickly. By breathing deeply down in your diaphragm, you increase the amount of air in your lungs, allowing you to breathe more comfortably for longer periods of time. Now I generally do this breathing exercise for anywhere between 10 and 30 seconds, though I have been known to do it for longer on particularly sensitive videos or difficult phrases. Another great benefit of this exercise is that, as mentioned, it's very soothing in many respects. That's why it's also used in meditation. Now, we'll come back to the mind later, but just keep in mind that added benefit. But sometimes breathing in isn't the problem. Sometimes I go to try the exercise and I find my stomach isn't budging when I try to exhale. And I have no idea what causes this, but what I have found is a technique to get around that, namely an O mantra. There's probably a different and more technical name for it, but that's what I call it. Pretty much, start by taking as much of a breath as you can before pursing your lips and making the following sound for as long as possible. I find this completely empties my lungs and makes the deep breathing exercise easier. This also leads nicely to the throat, making the ooh sound also starts to warm up the muscles at the back of your throat. And there's a way you can take things one step further, and that's by doing a sweep. Pretty much start at one end of the pitch spectrum and bring it to the other side whilst keeping your lips still, like such. By doing things this way, your mouth gets used to differences in pitch brought about not by one's lips, but by the muscles of one's throat and the tongue, giving said muscles a nice workout in the process. Additionally, if you've got a bit of a cough or you just produce a lot of phlegm, something as simple as patting the chest as you speak or carry out the exercise we just went over can loosen some stuff up, both in your throat and your lungs. So just keep patting as you keep talking or as you do the oh. It doesn't feel like it achieves much as you're doing it, but I found it can be a big help when I've been ill. Moving on to the mouth, a useful thing to remember is QE-QR. Now what is QE-QR? Well, it's an exercise that gets your mouth muscles working. Say the letter Q. Q. Really emphasize it and note the shape your mouth makes. Q. Now do the same with both E and R. E and R. Notice the completely different mouth positions involved. So when you say Q, E, Q, R, you're putting your jaw through a variety of key motions, warming up the muscles in the process and loosening your mouth. Of course, another good way to warm your mouth up is to simply speak. Adita reads her script aloud once before going on to record. Now that's not my style. I prefer to read something I won't be recording since I don't like to be too distracted by what's coming up. As an alternative to speaking, one may try some singing. Now what's important once you have your muscles warmed up is keeping them that way. If you go for these warm-up exercises only to have a cold drink, that's going to undo a lot of the work you just done as your muscles tense up from the cold. So at least drink room temperature water. I know it's difficult, I live in India and I truly appreciate the appeal of a cold drink. But you'll thank yourselves by sticking to this rule as you finish quicker with a nicer product. And then you can go have the whole bar as a treat to yourself afterwards. However, if you can, there's something to be said for hot water. Whether it be hot water or hot tea, it can offer you a boost. Now what I personally drink, and mind that I do this because it works for me, is boiled water with a pinch of salt in it. I find that the salt helps me keep focused, even though it tastes like shit. But I know Adita has a preference for tea, so find what works for you. But please, whatever you decide to drink, avoid dairy like the plague. Dairy makes you salivate in a rather aggressive fashion, which can result in a very unpleasant mouth noise. So if you're having tea and usually add milk, try adding a little extra sugar or sweetener to compensate. If there's one thing that vegans, audio recorders and the lactose intolerant agree upon, it's that milk is the enemy. So the last thing to really keep in mind is the mind. For me personally, this is my biggest obstacle, and I get the feeling the same is true for a lot of people. When you feel like you're messing up, you tend to stress out, speed up, and make actual mistakes. So there's some key points to remember. Recording is not a sprint. It's not about getting to the finish line first and recording your audio super duper fast. Nobody even knows how long it took you to record something. It's a marathon. It's about pacing yourself in a manner that allows you to reach the end without exhausting yourself. If you reach the end relaxed, your audio will be clearer and your audience will thank you for it. I used to get stuck in this very nasty habit of I have to record 2 sides of A4 in less than 22 minutes, else I'm a failure. But more recently, I've been trying to combat that. One of the ways I'm doing so is by having my hot drink in a thermos and only pouring out small portions. Therefore, each time I want to have a drink, I have to take a break to pour it out. And sure, that takes seconds? But I found those few steps, those few seconds, have a large impact on how I pace myself. It reminds me, take my time, do it at my own pace, and it'll all come together in the end. If you find yourself becoming frustrated, stop the recording. Save what you already have and repeat the breathing exercises we went over at the start. Consider them like a reset button. Do them until you feel secure and relaxed in your surroundings before picking up where you left off. It's hard, but it can work. It's also good to get into the habit of checking yourself in a handy mirror every few takes to ensure that everything is good, that no hair is out of line. There have been a few times where I've failed to do that and a rogue strand of hair has gone off to do who knows what. So take your time. If you rush, you might have to re-record parts, and trust me, it's much more fulfilling to get it right the first time and not have to backtrack. Another thing a lot of people don't realize when they start presenting, we all have the natural tendency to speed up a little. So when you're talking, try to be mindful of that. Slow your pace down a little and attempt to enunciate things the best you can. And I do know some people will consider that rich coming from me, but I do try. And that's what's most important. I'm not a trained voice actor, I've had no classes in presentation. I'm just a transsexual humanist who has slowly built a name for themselves online. Most people don't even have the resources I have. So the idea of putting out this video after getting hours and hours of paid help would be a little condescending. These are just tips that anyone should be able to use to help themselves improve their presentation. Now, there are a few additional points that don't really fit into any one area that I'd just like to mention here. The first being, posture is important. If you're slouching, it means you can't utilize your diaphragm as much, meaning that you'll be holding less air in your lungs and therefore won't be able to speak as long. So keep your posture upright, and if you're still having problems, why not see if you can record standing up? Another useful tip is don't forget to swallow. In all seriousness, often when we get nervous, we get one or two reactions. Our mouth dries out, or we salivate excessively. If you're the former, you'll likely notice this will be difficult to speak, but if it's the latter, it can go unnoticed. Just be aware of how much saliva is in your mouth, and if it's a lot, swallow before you start speaking. Otherwise, again, you can pick up some rather unpleasant mouth noises. The last tip I'd like to mention is this. Do not fear the jump cut. Sure, its excessive use breaks up the visual and can annoy some people, but honestly, most of us are used to it by now and fine with it. Not to mention, most people will open up videos such as these and either walk away to do the dishes or open up other tabs whilst they listen. The truth to YouTube above most other things is this. The visual aspect tends to be far less important than the audio aspect. If your message is cleaner in the audio with lots of visual cuts, people tend to respond better to that than a video with bad audio done in one take. Many large YouTubers cut every sentence, sometimes cutting mid-sentence as well. Cuts do not make you a bad YouTuber, merely one who has found the style they're comfortable with, and that's what's important, that you feel comfortable speaking. Because without that, you'll likely burn yourself out real quick and will lose another valuable voice. If you keep at things, you'll find yourself becoming your biggest critic. That's easy. What's hard is becoming your biggest fan and taking care of yourself above all else. But please, be good to yourself. You deserve it. So I hope some of you found this video useful. Just a quick reminder, I'm not a professional, nor have I been trained by one. These are just some of the tricks that I've picked up throughout the years and I thought might help some of you. For more advice like this, I suggest heading over to the Progressive Secular Alliance Creators Group. It's a community of creators, typically marginalized in the secular community, all sharing advice and building connections. You'll be able to find me there and many other YouTubers, podcasters and blog writers with years of experience, all wanting to help you better express yourself. As always, please check out our other videos. You can also support Essence Support by Patreon, and in doing so, help us become ad-free. We'd just like to say a big thank you to everyone who's already given to the channel, giving a special thanks to Hannah Banghart, Matthew Kovac, Bradar, McGay, Amit Devojny, Danny Martinez, Robert McCallan, Zan Braxton, Atlas5, and Jennifer Hiller. And for myself and Adita, take care now.